It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, Thomas Tuchel agrees to become the new England manager. Sky News understands that the former Chelsea and Bayern Munich boss has already signed his contract, with the FA planning to hold a press conference tomorrow to officially confirm the news. Coming up, we'll bring you the latest reaction to that huge breaking news this evening. Also coming up, the far-right global network that fueled the UK summer riots. A Sky News investigation has uncovered an international web of influencers and followers who work together to sow division after the Southport attack. Plus, calls for urgent regulation of the funeral sector as an inquiry into the crimes of David Fuller hears of distressing reports of neglect. And steel chestnuts, marked strings and allegations of cheating. Controversy hits this year's World Conker Championships. We'll hear from one of the competition's judges. All that to come, much more on the UK Tonight. Well, let's start with that big breaking news tonight, shall we? Sky News understands that the former Chelsea boss, Thomas Tuchel, has signed a deal to become the new England manager, replacing Gareth Southgate. He will be the third foreign coach of the Three Lions, following Sven-Göran Eriksson and, of course, Fabio Capello, and becomes the first German coach to take charge of the English national team. Well, the FA is going to hold a news conference at Wembley tomorrow around lunchtime to make this formal. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris joins me now. Rob, I think it's fair to say that this was unexpected. Less than 24 hours ago, all the talk was about Lee Carsley, the interim manager. He's not ruling himself in, not ruling himself out. Thomas Tuchel has come out of the blue. And also over whether Pep Guardiola could take the job as well. A bit of a smokescreen, because clearly the FA already in talks to sign up their new manager. The new manager being Thomas Tuchel, so a third foreign manager of the Three Lions. And what they do have in Tuchel is a proven trophy winner. We haven't had that with his predecessors, with Gareth Southgate, who achieved so much, obviously taking England to back-to-back finals, not with Roy Hodgson either, but Tuchel, a Champions League winner with Chelsea in their 2021, won titles at Paris Saint-Germain as well. And that's what England really do need, someone to take them over the line to finally land that first men's trophy since '66. And perhaps some of the questions about Gareth Southgate, whether he could change those big matches in the key moments, whether he could influence the match tactically as it was in play. Certainly with Tuchel, do have someone who is tactically sharp. In terms of it being a surprise, yes, it was. In terms of him being the right fit for England, I mean, you mentioned his CV there. Some really big clubs, Bayern Munich, PSG, Borussia Dortmund, Chelsea, of course, in that Champions League win. But is he the right fit for England? Because it's quite a unique job. The impossible job. You know, just, that's the one, yeah. You know, just reflecting, listening to the thoughts of the late Sven-Göran Eriksson in his life, when he talks about conversations with Tony Blair about only the two jobs of England men's manager and perhaps Prime Minister carry the most pressure in life. And obviously we've seen the rise of the women's team as well since then, and the fact they've shown how to win a trophy with the Euros in 2022. Tuchel can cope with those challenging moments. At clubs, he's had various moments of friction over transfers. Of course, he can't sign players with the national team. He also, at Chelsea, was there during that very problematic period when, of course, Roman Abramovich was sanctioned and there was the whole sale of the club, and he was the face of the club in press conferences. And we have seen, particularly in the Gareth Southgate years, it's not just about coaching on the pitch, it's about how you cope with those moments in the news conferences when it might be off-field matters you're asked about, political matters as well. And the fact he's managed in this country, which we hadn't had with Sven-Göran Eriksson or indeed Fabio Capello in the past, shows he does have that sort of association with England, English football. Yeah, and Thomas Tuchel has been asked about the England team in the past, before tournaments, just as you would at a press conference, probably not in mind of him being the England manager, but just asked about the England team, and he said they're a good side. And he, of course, knows Harry Kane really well. And Harry Kane has praised Thomas Tuchel, saying, you know, he's fantastic. Yeah, he was the manager of Bayern Munich last season with Harry Kane there in the team at his first season at the club. It was a very unusual season for Bayern. They didn't win the title. They were beaten to that by Bayer Leverkusen. And, you know, there were some, obviously, difficult moments for him there, but certainly his track record has him in good standing. There'll be questions over salary, because the FA do need to justify spending on a manager compared to, say, grassroots facilities as well. Probably won't be as much as Bayern Munich, will it? You'd expect not, potentially. And also, of course,
being a German manager will come into play. We can't overlook the fact in Germany during the last Euros, a lot of England fans still with their anti-German, xenophobic songs. So that'll be something that the FA have to work with in terms of eradicating from, the fan culture. And, even tonight, some of the columnists saying it's completely wrong. There shouldn't be a foreign manager of the England team. It should always be an English person who's in charge. But we have seen with Sarina Wiegman, who's Dutch, landing a trophy for the Lionesses. No one really questioning her credentials there. But certainly it's a big appointment, and obviously the vacancy that's been there since Gareth Southgate was in the job. And perhaps a moment, some said Gareth Southgate might have fallen short with the talent that he had and in his 8 years in charge. But he did take England to back-to-back finals. No Englishman had taken England to a final since 1966 and Sir Alf Ramsey. So the bar has been set there for Tuchel as he begins the task of trying to qualify for the World Cup in 2026.
Yeah, he's in no doubt as to what the FA and England in the wider context expects. You mentioned that there about qualification. Let's look at the path ahead for Thomas Tuchel. It starts really, doesn't it, tomorrow afternoon with that press conference. The FA expected to make this news formal. Will he be there? And then what are the steps ahead? When is he actually going to get his tracksuit on and get with the England team?
Well, it looks like Lee Carsley will still be the interim manager for the final Nations League games next month. He's got a task to get England promoted back to the top tier of that. So a bit of time for Thomas Tuchel to certainly settle in. Carsley's obviously was under 21s manager and was promoted as interim during the interregnum at the moment. So the question is, will he go back to the under 21s? Will he be part of this new setup? Because that is another thing that Gareth Southgate had grown the England DNA, the whole St George's Park HQ over the last decade or so, which was seen to be the pathway for English coaches. He came through it. He was under 21s coach, Southgate. He was part of the whole setting up of St George's Park. This is an outsider coming in, as we saw with Sarina Wiegman. So the FA will obviously need to signal what hope that might give to future coaches who hope to sort of follow the pathway into the Three Lions job. But in December, a key moment, because that's when he'll discover who their opponents will be in trying to qualify for the 2026 World Cup, which will be in the United States, Canada and Mexico. It's, less than 2 years away now. It seems we're only, just at the Euros now. But certainly, a lot will be maybe pinning their hopes on Thomas Tuchel and whether he can finally land that first trophy since '66.
OK, well, Rob, thank you. I know you'll be at that press conference tomorrow around lunchtime at Wembley. You'll, of course, see it here on Sky News. Let's get more on this story, this breaking news tonight. Thomas Tuchel confirmed as the new England manager. I'm joined by the Independent's chief football writer, Miguel Delaney. Miguel, good evening to you. Your reaction to this breaking news tonight?
It's a statement appointment. It's maybe just as the week has gone on, less surprising than it would otherwise have seemed. But actually, I think the speed is quite striking. I mean, even at the weekend, I was away with England for both of the games, including the one in Helsinki. And I suppose the feeling was still that Carsley is going to get these 3 camps and these 6 Nations League games. Now, there's been no confirmation as yet as to whether Tuchel would come straight in, although you would think if we're getting to the point where it is confirmed this week, Tuchel's not in a job at the moment. All right, there is maybe some negotiation to be done with Bayern Munich, although people in Germany say that it won't be the case that the FA have to pay compensation. But given that, there looks no reason for him to wait. So you'd think he'd take the job straight away. And it does reflect how quickly this has happened, where we went from a situation where over the weekend we were all wondering about the exact nature of Lee Carsley's comments and why he wouldn't confirm that he absolutely wants the job. Well, I suppose that's a bit easier to understand now, especially given that it's become clear that overtures were made to Tuchel over a month ago, and they were speaking in the last week.
Yeah, who says you can't keep secrets in sport anymore? Miguel, you'll have heard me just talking to Rob Harris, our sports correspondent there, and he was talking about the legacy Gareth Southgate leaves. I mean, he's taking them to the finals of 2 major tournaments. So close, the closest England have been for a long, long time. And also the imprint that Gareth Southgate has left on that team. So much talk about making it a real team on and off the pitch, his man management style. What kind of style will Thomas Tuchel bring? Will he continue that? Is he a different character? What can the England team and the England fans expect?
So I think in terms of pure football and tactics, Tuchel would probably, well, not probably, he is considered in football a higher level of tactician than Southgate. I think that's really beyond doubt. I think that's one of the main attractions.
Well, you only have to look at his CV, so I think you're probably quite safe in saying that. You're not going to offend Gareth Southgate, I'm sure.
Exactly, yeah. Players mostly like him, but he certainly doesn't have Southgate's diplomacy. Now, he's as good a speaker as Southgate, to be fair, and press conferences will be entertaining. Obviously, the job isn't about that. But he's also a good speaker because he's willing to speak his mind. And that has led to tension, shall we say, with hierarchies at a lot of the clubs he's worked at, including Chelsea, including Bayern Munich, including Borussia Dortmund. Paris Saint-Germain was another, although he got them to a Champions League final as well. So, yeah, it's, I think, maybe certainly a step up in terms of tactics, but maybe lacking some of Southgate's diplomacy.
Well, we wait to see. It's unconfirmed as to whether Thomas Tuchel will be at the press conference tomorrow. You would expect that he would be. As you said, he's not in a job at the moment, so he might make the flight over to be at that press conference at Wembley tomorrow. I'm sure he won't ruffle any feathers in his unveiling in his first press conference. He might save that for later. We did touch on the fact that he is only the third non-English manager of the men's national team. A German coach at that. That's a little bit of spice into the mix as well, isn't it, considering the history of England and Germany in men's football?
Yeah, there's obviously the real world history, which I'm sure a lot of columnists will go into. I don't think that should be important. Of more relevance maybe is the football rivalry. But again, personally, I don't think that should influence the decision, especially as you're saying, there is a precedent of appointing national team managers. I think where that choice is most where it's actually worthy of most debate, and this is touching on something that Rob said, is that this is a football association and an England national team that's in a very different place to when Capello was appointed or when Eriksson was appointed. Since then, they've essentially undertaken an overhaul of the entire structure of English football, and a key to that Southgate was so central to, was creating this coaching culture, this football ideology that's supposed to underscore the national team. And one of the primary ideas was that it would be a coaching pathway for young managers, that the national team would say something greater about the game. And I think there is a bigger debate to be had there about what having to bring in an appointment from outside says about that. I think it's worthy of much more debate. There is even, this is something that has been floated in the past, but whether, especially for countries of England's size, whether there should even be a need, does it truly represent the national football culture in the same way to have a foreign coach? But at the end of the day, this is ultimately about winning the 2026 World Cup. From my understanding, that was a key to negotiation. For Tuchel himself, it's the obvious attraction. Carsley mentioned this the other day, that this is a job that's a real opportunity for someone, because you come in, and largely because of Southgate, you've got a ready-made team, one that can just make that final step. On the other side, the FA obviously want to bring this era that we've spoken about to fruition, to finally win that trophy. And if Tuchel does win the 2026 World Cup, less than 2 years away now, then, obviously it will come up, but amid the euphoria of victory, is anyone going to be too bothered about the nationality of the coach? But of course, there is something greater that it might say about where English football is right now. And there was a good piece from Jack McBrook in The Athletic today about this, there's almost a reflection here of the club game, in that obviously the English club game has just been about importing all the best talent from all over the world, no matter what. Whereas this does feel as if the FA is going slightly along the same lines, rather than necessarily nurturing their own coaches in the same way. So that is a discussion that isn't going to go away, but certainly it's a discussion that it becomes a lot easier if you win games and win a trophy.
Yeah. Well, we are where we are. We have a foreign manager of the England men's team, and like you said, if they win the World Cup, nobody's going to care what his nationality is. He'll definitely be an honorary Englishman in that sense. But I guess this is the question, Miguel. You know football really well. You've watched a lot of Thomas Tuchel's team. Is he going to be the cherry on the cake for England? Is this the man that's finally going to get England over the line and win a trophy for the first time since '66? As
I've been writing in The Independent for this evening, actually. Obviously, top choices would have been Klopp and Guardiola. If you can't get either of those, though, Tuchel essentially represents the best level down. We are talking about someone who I would say over the past 5 years has been in that absolute top bracket of coaches. Now, maybe because of a few issues in his last jobs, he hasn't sustained it to the same level, isn't necessarily seen in as exactly the same status as Klopp or Guardiola. But we are still talking about a coach who is very close to the elite, practices all the most kind of progressive and sophisticated approaches in modern management, is willing to be more pragmatic. And that's actually where there's an argument where he might even be a superior option for England than Guardiola, because I think while Guardiola, we are talking about one of the best coaches of all time, he is dogmatic about an ideology, and that ideology, it does feel like it takes the intensity and time of the club game to have it at its best. Tuchel would consider himself along that tactical school, or as part of that same tactical school as Guardiola, but he's obviously been willing to be much more pragmatic. That was shown when he beat Guardiola in one of the biggest games of their careers, the 2021 Champions League final between Manchester City and Chelsea. And I think Tuchel is a coach who's more adept to just impose a system for one game. And that is what tournament football is about. And that could be a difference maker. That's where we could be talking about an inspired choice. I mean, like, just to put it in simple terms, given that most of the top coaches now go to the most lucrative jobs in the club game, there is an argument that Tuchel will be the best manager at the 2026 World Cup in the USA, Mexico and Canada.
Oh, let's hope so. Miguel Delaney, really good to talk to you tonight. Thank you. Reacting to that breaking news that Thomas Tuchel is going to be the next England manager of the men's senior team. Thank you so much. No problem. And more on that story throughout the evening here on Sky News. But in other news today, a court has been hearing the recording of a call in which the father of 10-year-old Sara Sharif told police that he had killed her. Sara's body was found at her home in Woking last year after her father, stepmother and uncle had fled to Pakistan. They all deny murder and causing or allowing the death of a child. Sky's Saba Chowdhury has this report. And just to warn you, you may find its content distressing.
Behind Sara's smile, concealed a grim reality. A child subjected to a campaign of abuse for 2 years, say prosecutors. Today, the court heard her father's call to the police from Pakistan as he admits to killing his daughter, he says, while trying to punish her.
Take a deep breath and tell me what's happened.
I cannot. I physically punished my daughter and she died.
Your daughter has died?
I killed my daughter.
How have you killed your daughter?
I beat her up. It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much.
Sara Sharif also left a note next to Sara's body. "I love you, Sara," he wrote. "I'm running away because I'm scared, and I swear to God my intention was not to kill her." The court heard that Sara's home in Woking, a place that should have been her sanctuary, was anything but. A neighbour told police she had heard a single high-pitched scream days before Sara's death. Others heard screams, smacking and crying. At school, teachers noticed bruising on her chin and under her eye, and that Sara would use her hijab to hide her face. The prosecution's allegation that Sara began to wear the hijab to conceal her injuries. Here at the Old Bailey, the jury heard some harrowing details about Sara's abuse. This included traces of blood in the kitchen, on a vacuum cleaner, and even on a cricket bat. The police also said that they found potential weapons with Sara's DNA on it. This included a rolling pin and also the buckle of a belt recovered from a children's Wendy house in the garden. Police! The first police officer on the scene also gave evidence, telling the court he found Sara's body left on a bunk bed with bruising on her face and little finger. Charged with her murder and causing or allowing her death, her father, Martyn Sharif, her stepmother, Binish Batul, and her uncle, Faisal Shahzad Malik. All three deny the charges against them. Today's evidence, the first real glimpse into the brutal final weeks of this 10-year-old girl. Saba Chowdhury, Sky News at the Old Bailey.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight. After Martyn's law returned to Parliament this week, we'll be speaking to Martyn Hett's mum, a tireless campaigner trying to improve the safety of venues in the wake of the Manchester bombing.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
More flares going off, a volley of rocks, cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. We have now left Italy and entered France. Nobody's asked to check our identity. Made by people who dare to challenge.
Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why?
Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
It's devastating, actually.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
A police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, better known as Martyn's Law, returned to Parliament for its second reading this week. The law will make it mandatory for public venues to introduce better security measures and training for staff in the wake of the 2017 Manchester bombing. Martyn Head was one of the victims of that attack. His mum, Figan Murray, has campaigned tirelessly for the legislation, and her dedication was acknowledged by the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, during the debate.
I cannot imagine Figan's pain, and I am in awe of her courage. To suffer such a horrendous loss and somehow find the strength to fight for changes that will help others is heroic. And despite her grief, she has campaigned. And she said this morning, when asked why she does this, that she looks at her child's ashes on the bookshelf, and she doesn't want other families to have to face the same. So yes, she and campaigners have fought for this law. This bill has been a long time coming, and she has never given up. And I'm sure the whole House will agree when I say to Figan, you are a true inspiration. Yeah. Officially, we are debating the Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, but in essence and in spirit, this is Martyn's Law.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Figan joins me on the programme now. Figan, good to see you. I just wonder how you felt in that moment yesterday in the House of Commons, the Home Secretary saying those words, and she was looking up. She was looking up because you were watching on from the gallery. How did you feel about that yesterday?
It was just literally surreal and overwhelming to be there and to get to this point, because it's been 5.5, 6 years since the campaign started, and to get this to this point was just incredible.
So just talk to us, Figan, explain to those watching tonight at what point we're at here with Martyn's Law.
Yeah, we've reached the point of no return. This law is going to happen now, definitely now. It's being debated in Parliament. But obviously there are a few more steps to go, because legislation isn't just going to be churned out easily. So there's a bit debating happening in both houses, and hopefully by the 8th anniversary the King will have signed it and it's in the statute books.
How are you feeling then approaching that anniversary? As you said, this has been a long time. This has been your focus for so long since you lost Martyn, really. It's what's kept you going and it's what's driven you to this point. How are you feeling
Yeah,
approaching that anniversary?
I mean, obviously, I would like it not to go beyond the 8th anniversary. I think 8 years is a long time to wait for legislation to happen to keep people safe. Nobody should die on a night out. Everybody should be able to come back back home after a night out, literally.
Just to explain to people watching in a little bit more detail about what this law will do, it will mean that venues with a capacity of over 200 would be required to notify the authorities about its public protection procedures, including things like evacuations in the event of an attack, and, you know, protect people from threats, have lockdowns, have better communication, because what we know about the Manchester bombing is that when that attack happened, venues were at a loss because they didn't have the training or the procedures in place.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there is absolutely no legislation in the UK or anywhere else in the world that says that people need to be kept safe by law. Yet there are laws on how many toilets a venue has to have, how hot the food has to be in canteens, but there is nothing to keep people safe, and I find that incredible after music venues like the Bataclan, like Manchester Arena, like the one in Russia, the music arena. These events should not happen, but actually, you know, terrorism, unfortunately, is rife, and it can happen anytime, anywhere, any place, and therefore we must, as a society, bring in this legislation to keep people safe.
Yeah, you make a good point. We heard from the head of MI5 last week just saying that, you know, the world is still a dangerous place. These threats are still happening. Just because they haven't come to fruition doesn't mean that they're not going on and they're not being stopped in their tracks by MI5. And in light of that, you mentioned there that this kind of legislation doesn't just not exist in the UK, but it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Is that your next step? Is this to take it to other countries?
Well, I already have, you know, obviously I do a lot of these presentations, so do my co-campaigners. But actually, there's a lot of interest from abroad as well. I've been to America, Germany, Turkey, and done online presentations to other countries. But I mean, it's really important that the UK has this unique position where they can really shine with this legislation and show other countries what they need to do. But obviously it needs to be tightened a little bit. We need to ensure that we carry on keeping a really close eye on its journey through Parliament until the very end, and we need to make sure that there's no loopholes left, and that as many venues as possible are covered. And also, you know, the government has named the SIA as a regulator, which is similar to Ofsted, but for security. And we need to ensure that they are given the powers and the infrastructure and the resources to do this process properly and ensure that everybody does what they need to do.
Well, Figen, you've been described as a tireless campaigner. I would call you tenacious as well. You know, you've taken this every step of the way, not taken no for an answer. And like you said, you're following the fine detail to make sure that this is worthy of your son's name. What do you think Martyn would have made of his mum? You know, talking to politicians, going to the House of Commons, fighting for others.
Well, hopefully he would be really pleased that his name is out there, but actually that nobody else will die for the same reasons. I hope that he would also find it rather amusing that I'm talking to politicians, because he had a good sense of humour. But actually, hopefully he'll also know he won't have died for nothing.
Oh, Figen, he'd be extremely proud of you. Thank you so much. Figen Murray, their mother of Martyn Het, Martyn's Law, on the brink, nearly there, just a little bit longer to go before it's passed into legislation. We really appreciate your time on the programme. Pleasure as always to talk to you, Figen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So to come here on the UK Tonight, we'll have a special report for you on the international web of influencers who helped fan the flames of this summer's UK riots in the wake of the Southport stabbings. Plus, we'll have more on that breaking news tonight. Thomas Tuchel has agreed to be the new England manager. Harry Redknapp will join us to give us his reaction. Well, let's continue our coverage of the big breaking news tonight from the world of sport. The FA appearing to have found a replacement finally for Gareth Southgate as the next England manager. Ex-Chelsea boss Thomas Tuchel is understood to have already signed a deal to lead the Three Lions. We are expecting a press conference from Wembley tomorrow afternoon. But right now, let's get the thoughts of a man many fans would have loved to have seen become England manager, the former West Ham, Portsmouth and Tottenham boss, Harry Redknapp. Harry, how are you tonight?
Sarah-Jane, I'm good, thank you.
Good. How have you reacted to this news? I think it's caught everybody on the hop, this one. A bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. I knew it was pretty obvious that they were going to appoint someone in the next, few weeks, obviously. Lee Carsley, really, I couldn't see any way he was going to get the job, to be truthful. I felt that apart from the Greek result, it looked like at the moment it was just too much for him, But I was hoping, I thought maybe Eddie Howe would get the job. Eddie would still, even though he's at Newcastle, Eddie was still the favourite, in my opinion, for the job. So I was a little bit surprised when we saw, finally they've done it very quickly this week and give the job to Tuchel.
Yeah, so much talk about Eddie Howe, but perhaps the timing wasn't right. I mean, Eddie Howe's still young. He's having a great time at Newcastle United. So maybe when that job comes around again, because we know it does come up every now and again, don't we?
You never know.
You never know. Well, let's talk about Thomas Tuchel. It's expected to be formally announced by the FA tomorrow at Wembley. What do you make of him? Is he the right fit for England, Harry?
I'll be honest. Well, I'd be lying, Sarah-Jane, if I didn't say I wanted an Englishman to manage England. I'm very patriotic. I think we should have an English manager, but But obviously the field was very small to choose from because Englishmen don't get jobs managing in the Premier League very often now. All the clubs are owned by foreign owners, and when they bring a manager in, they bring a foreign manager in. As soon as there's a change, they never look below the Premiership to go and bring somebody in from the Championship. You know, it's always got to be a foreign manager. So the field is getting smaller and smaller. I don't know what we got, maybe 3 managers, I may be wrong, maybe 2, maybe 3 managers in the Premier League who are English. So the field wasn't a big field to choose from, unfortunately. But I do think that with all the FA, the money that they spend on coaching courses and everything else, but when the jobs come along, an Englishman never seems to get the big jobs. It's sad.
Yeah, do you think they need to invest more in a pathway for English managers to get there, to that pinnacle?
I don't know what you can do, Sarah-Jane, because when they decide, you know, you've got foreign owners coming, they're not bothered about the FA, they just come in, they want a sexy name, a manager, someone, they all know football agents, somebody mentions somebody who's managing somewhere in the world, and they go and give them the job, and they come in and get all the jobs. That's how it works. I don't know. I just think it's very, very sad. As I say, there's lots of talented younger people like Eddie Howe was managing Bournemouth. Eddie would have never, ever even been on the radar if he hadn't got promoted with Bournemouth. The only way he ever arrived in the Premier League was to take Bournemouth through the divisions. And that's the same with most lads now who get jobs, English lads, whoever make it into the Premier. They have to get promoted with a smaller club or whoever, bring them up, and then they get recognised. Other than that, they never get the opportunity. And I do think it's a shame.
Yeah, well, we haven't gone for an Englishman. England have gone for a German. I mean, that adds a bit of spice into the mix, doesn't it, when it's given, you know, England and Germany's history in international
Yeah, absolutely.
football. What do you make of Thomas Tuchel's record? Because obviously they've gone for someone who's won a lot of trophies at big clubs, you know, Chelsea. He was most recently at Bayern Munich. He's managed at PSG.
Yeah, he lost his job there.
I mean, he's the man that can finally get England over the line, isn't he?
I mean, he's lost his, like most of us at some stage, we all lose. He's lost his job quite quickly at a couple of clubs. You know, it's not like he's been a massive success there. You know, it was not like Jurgen Klopp was at Dortmund, then went to Liverpool and was a success and stayed many, many years. You know, he's sort of come and gone at a couple of clubs. So he's got a great opportunity. We've got fantastic players. People talk about great, they keep saying, oh, you've got to be a great coach to England. This man's a great coach. This one's a great England manager. You know, it's not bad. There are no great coaches. He's not a great coach. You have to have a little bit of common sense, pick the best players, put them in the right position, get the best out of them, build an atmosphere, make them feel great about themselves, make them feel good about playing for England. Let them know that, hey, we can go and win a trophy. This team is fantastic. That's what it is. It's not a case, because how long do you get to work with them? You get them on, they play on a Saturday for their clubs. They come in Sunday night, have a warm down on Monday. Tuesday, do a little bit of whatever. Wednesday, they're playing. Then they're resting it. So you don't really get a chance to work with them. It's not like you're coaching them, you know. You try to get a little bit of, maybe a bit of shape, bit of team pattern to how you're going to play, but you haven't got long to do that. Everyone ridiculed the other day Lee Carsley, so I did 20 minutes on this system. Well, unfortunately for the England, that's about what you get. You've got them on one day before the game. How long you got to work with them before they play? So, yeah, 20 minutes, half hour on a bit of shape and a bit of pattern of play is about what you get. So it's not about coaching. It's about having a little bit of common sense. As I say, picking the best players, put them in the right positions, make them feel great about themselves, make them feel proud for playing for the best country in the world, and get the best out of them.
And Gareth Southgate seemed to do that, didn't he?
To a point.
In terms of what Gareth Southgate did, is Thomas Tuchel going to continue that, or is he going to come in?
No, he's got to do better, hasn't he? We didn't win a trophy. With this incredible group of players who never won a trophy. Had great opportunities. We had the best draws in every competition you've ever seen. We go to the Euros, all the 6 good teams in one half of the draw. The other 6 teams, the teams that we're drawn with, I mean, the standard of them was second rate, a lot of them. And then we end up getting to the final game, but we can't win. We do it at Wembley. We get beat Croatia, the World Cup before. We've had fantastic opportunities to win, but we haven't done it. So it's a great opportunity for somebody to come and win a tournament with this group of players. Someone's got to do it, surely, because it's not as if we have got the most fantastic young group of talent of any country in the world, I think. Spain have got some decent good young players, but England have got some fantastic young players. And Tuchel, I think, is probably the lucky man to do it. Unfortunately, he is German and not English.
Yeah. Someone's got to come along and do it. It might be Thomas Tuchel, but we're talking...
It might be Tommy Tuchel.
It might be Tommy Tuchel, but with you tonight, Harry, talking with the fire in your belly and the patriotism...
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not sure we're ruling you out of ever taking the England job.
I'm ready for a comeback.
I don't think you're ever done, are you?
I would do now, but I'm busy on Saturdays. I can't make Saturdays. That's the problem.
Have a word with Sandra. She might let you have a few Saturdays off. Like you said, you don't spend much time with the team.
Is where?
You don't spend much time with the team, so Sandra might let you have a few Saturdays, Harry.
She might do, yeah, but I go racing normally on a Saturday now, so I can't make it.
Oh, we've lost you to the GGs. Harry Redknapp, really good to talk to you.
Lovely
Thank you so
talking to you,
much.
Sarah-Jane. Have a great evening.
And you.
Bye,
Harry Redknapp there with his reaction to the appointment of Thomas Tuchel as the next England manager. We'll see, he's a little bit lukewarm about that. Thomas Tuchel going to have to win Harry Redknapp over, and maybe a few England fans as well. Let us know your thoughts at Sky News. Next tonight, we have a Sky News investigation for you. This is into the global network that helped spark riots in the UK this summer. A wave of online misinformation led to violent scenes right across the country after 3 children were killed in that stabbing attack in Southport. Well, Sky News has found that only 6 of the most influential accounts posting about the far-right violence were UK-based, with many more from overseas. Our data and forensics team uncovered an international network of influencers and followers, all working together to sow division. Sky's Tom Cheshire has this next report.
The reaction to the murder of 3 little girls in Southport rapidly descended into full-scale riots across the country. This apparently homegrown response came with international provocation. Although there have been limited reports about foreign involvement in the riots, Sky News has, for the first time, uncovered and mapped the networks on Telegram, the encrypted messaging app where the flames were fanned and the riots were organised. We've been working with Pros, an open-source intelligence startup which has a deep penetration of far-right and conspiracist networks on Telegram, to find out who is behind the messaging.
One interesting thing we can see here, especially considering this is the first day, is that the source of most of the information that people are talking about on Telegram isn't British, English language communities.
And this is a map of all those accounts for the 2 weeks after the Southport murders. The red is UK-based extreme right-wing or conspiracist accounts, and you can see it's dwarfed by other sources. Purple for non-UK-based English accounts, but also Germany in orange, along with French and Spanish at the top of the chart. The most widely shared content on Telegram during the initial 3 days of the unrest was primarily authored by non-domestic accounts from the USA and Europe. They played a significant role in shaping the UK's online discourse, amplifying far-right narratives and disinformation. Of the top 20 most important sources in those 2 weeks after the attacks in Southport, only 6 were based in the UK. The rest were abroad. This post from a right-wing Spanish politician and member of the European Parliament falsely said the attacker was a Muslim immigrant. We tried to contact the account but received no reply. Silvano Trotta was one of the other most influential users, ripping an article from the Daily Mail and posting his own comment, falsely peddling the name Ali al-Shakati. We asked the people behind those accounts for comment, and one of them agreed. Silvano Trotta is a telecoms entrepreneur based in Strasbourg, France, on the border with Germany.
You did this Telegram post which was viewed, hundreds of thousands of times, giving a false name. Why did you put that post out there?
It's always difficult. Who doesn't make mistakes? But all the same, he's still an immigrant, even if he was born in Wales, even if he's 17 years old.
We asked other accounts for comment, but didn't receive a reply. Telegram spokesperson Remy Vaughan told us, Telegram is not a place to spread violent content. Moderators removed UK groups and channels calling for violence when they were discovered in August. To dissuade criminal misuse of Telegram, IP addresses and phone numbers of criminals who violate our rules can be disclosed to the authorities in response to valid legal requests. We are ready to cooperate with the UK government through the appropriate channels. In Southport, the memorials to the 3 murdered girls are still in place. One of the tragedies of the riots is that they eclipse the grief the town felt and still feels. But experts have warned that the riots and the online reaction were not a one-off, but a playbook that could be used again. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Southport.
Still to come on the UK tonight, steel chestnuts, marked strings and allegations of cheating. Controversy hits this year's World Conker Championships. Plus, we'll have more on that breaking news tonight. Thomas Tuchel signing a contract to be the new England manager.
Hello and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast equivalent of a Pro Plus caffeine tablet that tells you everything about what you need to know the day ahead in British politics in under 20 minutes.
My name is Jack Blanchard of Politico. With me in the Zoom call is Sam Coates of Sky News.
The front runner among the members, Kelly Badenoch, did much worse than I was expecting. Now, traditionally and historically, MPs want to rush to back early the front-runner candidate because it helps your chances of getting a job further down the track. It's good to be seen to be there early with the person who's going to win. And the fact that even though she was topping a lot of the surveys, that she didn't get more than 6 votes behind Robert Jenrick is very ominous for her campaign.
This issue had sort of bubbled away a bit last week. It was always going to come back this week because of the vote, but it was rather blown up again on Thursday due to a very prominent Labour Party commentator wading in on it and saying that Rachel Reeves might need an escape route. Now, that person was Ed Balls, who used possibly one of the most prominent Labour figures to speak about Treasury matters.
Oh my God.
What happened?
Sorry, I've got my cat is fighting another cat through the window. I'm going to have to stop it.
There's a cat fight.
I'm Martyn Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon. I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it. Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martyn Brunt, Sky News, at the Old Bailey.
Hello, welcome back. Teddy is here to take us through the sport. And there's a big story we're going to start with, and that is the fact that Thomas Tuchel looks like he's going to be the next England manager, or Tommy Tuchel, as Harry Redknapp called him a little earlier on. I quite like that.
Yeah, me too.
What's been the initial reaction? Because this news is, you know, just over a couple of hours old, so reaction coming in all the time.
Yeah, it's very fresh, very new, actually. Dean Ashton, former England striker on Sky Sports News just a few moments ago, made an interesting point that he felt that Thomas Tuchel was quite a defensive coach. Stylistically, there's a lot of criticism of Gareth Southgate. Perhaps he wasn't utilising all of England's wonderful attacking players. Of course, Lee Carsley was then criticised for going overboard with the attacking players against Greece and that big defeat at Wembley last week. There's been mixed reactions, I suppose. You've had Harry Redknapp on, I know, being not wholly supportive
Wanted an English
of it.
manager, he made that very clear.
But there is a big connection between Thomas Tuchel and the England captain Harry Kane. Signed him for Bayern Munich last year. Kane's best ever figures, a goal a game. And Kane was speaking before this news broke, but just see if you maybe get a sense that perhaps he had an inkling that maybe something was in the offing. He's very complimentary about his former boss and now his new England boss.
Good job.
Well, to be honest, I don't know. I haven't been told anything. So, yeah, until it's announced, obviously, I can't really comment. But we have to wait and see. Obviously, I know Thomas well from last year and fantastic coach, fantastic person. So I'm sure the guys at the FA will contact me when they know more about it.
Well, Tuchel's never managed at international level, but his CV at club level is pretty impressive. Chelsea, of course, getting them to that Champions League win.
Yeah.
Borussia Dortmund, PSG, Bayern Munich. But the big question is he the right kind of fit for England? Because England just need a manager that's going to get them over the line, finally get that trophy in their hands.
Yeah, Gareth Southgate was great in lots of ways, wasn't he? The best manager since Sir Alf Ramsey, got to a World Cup semi-final, back-to-back Euros finals, but he has won that Champions League with Chelsea. As we say, some question marks that maybe in that final against Manchester City he was a little bit defensive. He'll say that it wasn't being defensive, it was just being counter-attacking in how he approached it. But he's a manager who falls out with people a little bit as well. We've seen that at Paris Saint-Germain, we've seen it at Borussia Dortmund. Typically lasts about 2 years. So a really interesting line just coming to us in the past few minutes from Sky Germany is that we believe it's they believe it's an 18-month contract, which will take him up until the end of the 2026 World Cup, which, given his tenure length, most recently at Bayern Munich just over a year, then perhaps that would be a good sign of a good fit for England, particularly if we can bring that World Cup home for the first time in 60 years. So now we've got big news regarding a former Manchester United manager and part-time Scotland manager as well, in just a second.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
So Gunther, new book, Gunther Steiner, Unfiltered. So I brought the swear box along, just in case.
Have you got some money? Or would you like to put the money in?
Not much. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I did go to the end. At the end, you detail the phone conversation with Gene Haas, where he explains he's not renewing your contract. Now, that happens after a row between the two of you. Had you been more of a yes man, might you still have been in the job now?
Yes, for sure. If I would have just been always, yes, let's do this, let's not do this. But I couldn't see where the team is going by where he wanted to go. And that frustrated me, you know. So, obviously, if I would have said yes to everything, I would be still there and be unhappy. So I'm gone now, but I'm happy.
In a way, you were at loggerheads. It
exactly,
made sense.
yeah, exactly.
There's been some litigation. There's probably not a lot you can say about that. But what about your relationship? Is there one anymore? You and Gene?
Oh, you know the answer. There is not a relationship. No. Because people ask, what is the relationship? There is none, you know. Yeah. So that's the easiest answer, you know. So obviously, I don't want to get into my court case, but they sued me for the first book.
That's been dismissed.
That has been dismissed. So hopefully it stays dismissed. But you never know.
Had you still been in the job, would you be enjoying the kind of results that the team are getting now? Can you be confident about that?
The car was made last year, and a lot of credit goes there to the team which did it, to Simone Resta, which now is at Mercedes, you know, at the time. I mean, we sat down last year in June and made the decision that the car was born in the beginning of the year. And I found strange beginning of this year when it was said, last will be last, you know. It was like, I think you're wrong. So we were confident that the car will be in the midfield.
But in the virtual world, these two are definitely back, Mark.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Finally tonight, the World Conker Championships. It's not necessarily an event you'd associate with allegations of cheating and skullduggery, but that is exactly what has beset this year's tournament. Now, David Jenkins, a veteran player known as King Conker, was accused of using a steel chestnut on his way to becoming men's champion for the first time, having taken part in this competition since 1977. Well, Mr. Jenkins has denied the allegations, calling the claims a load of nonsense. Well, let's get an official view from Richard Howard, who was the chief umpire at the World Conker Championships. Really good to have you on with us this evening to clear this up. Now, the accusation is that King Conker used a steel chestnut. You were part of the judging team. What did you see?
I didn't see a steel conker used at all. However, the point was made, therefore I had to do the necessary checks as chief umpire. I've spoken to all the umpires, that there's 2 to each podium. So all of the umpires that umpired his games actually checked, I've checked with them. He drew the conker from, in each case, from the bag. He checked it himself. We always make sure when a conker is drawn from the bag that everything is right and that conker stays in the player's hands. So I don't see in any way that he could have cheated. There was no other conker. However, he shouldn't really have had a he made that conker to take and show the children as a bit of fun. It doesn't really look that much like a conker. Not what I would call a Conker anyway. And my stewards would have noticed if there was anything untoward.
Yeah, you're the experts. You know your Conkers from your steel chestnuts. But the thing is, he had this in his pocket, didn't he? And all the opponents whose Conkers he obliterated found out he had this in his pocket afterwards and wondered if that was what was at play. But there was also a suggestion of coloured strings. So when you take your Conker out of the bag, they're all attached to strings already, aren't they? So it take a bit of a while to put them together.
They're the bootlaces.
Yeah, the bootlaces. So what was the allegations about coloured string? Is that even possible?
He helps with the drilling of the Conkers, but that is all. The people that actually put the Conkers on the strings, on the leather bootlaces, are myself and my partner, which she often grumbles about that, but she helps me. We put them in the bags, so when we turn up at the Conker Championships, they are kept separate and they are looked after by us. No one else touches them until the start of play. I hand the bags out to the two umpires that are on each podium.
So it's all run properly. Your wife might grumble, but it keeps you honest, keeps, everything as it should be, so it can't be interfered. So let's just take a moment for King Conker then, shall we, David Jenkins? Because after all this controversy, have you cleared his name now? Is he the official world champion?
Yes, I feel we've cleared his name. I was confident anyway, but I've done all the necessary checks to make sure that everything was done properly. And he's played for many years, and he's finally done it.
I was going to say, it's quite the achievement because he's been competing since 1977. Yeah. And this was his year. So how has he reacted to this? Because obviously, having finally won and then to be accused of this, how has he reacted?
He got very upset for a start. I've never seen him get so upset that it actually brought tears to his eyes that anybody could think that he had cheated. Now, I've known him for a long time because he's been playing Conkers for a long time. And I know that I would trust him with my life, to be honest. I am sure he is, and he got really upset that anybody could accuse him of cheating.
Well, look, Richard, thank you so much for coming on to Sky News tonight, onto the UK Tonight, to talk about this, because it has been a big story. It's been all over the news. And tonight, it shouldn't detract from the fact that David Jenkins is the world Conkers champion. He really has earned the title of King Conker. And his name is cleared. He can celebrate that victory. And we salute him and congratulate him here on Sky News tonight. That is Richard Howard, Chief Umpire at the World Conker Championships. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
That's all from us. We will be back here on Sky News at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.